So in this exercise labeled compromised, we're going to try to figure out whether or not the website that we're looking at appears to have some sort of compromise associated with it, or if it's doing anything that's strange. The input that we're going to be taking in is an insurance company webpage, specifically pledgeinsurance.com, and our goal is to essentially identify cases where users are complaining about slow activity and weird behavior on the insurance website, and we're going to take the role as the content administrator, someone who basically looks after the website. So again, we have 3 key objectives that we're going after here. The first is the website compromised? And if so, how and why might that be the case? The second objective is to identify any other websites that may be exhibiting this strange behavior or might share some sort of same technology overlap. And then finally, we want to take a look at the infrastructure and identify the related infrastructure that's associated with this and some of the components and technology, and identify if those are potential compromises as well or if they're legitimate activity. Okay, so we are the content administrators of pledgeinsuranceservices.com. We have that up on the screen right now, and we can see website. It's not phishing related. This is something legitimate. We run this. This is part of our company.
And what we've heard is people, when they're using the site, say, hey, it's really slow.
And it's slow, and it just exhibits strange behavior. You know, when they go and visit the page, their fan spins up, and it seems like their computer, sometimes even the browser crashes. And you know, and we want to figure out and get to the bottom of this. What's going on here? So our first objective is to identify, is our website compromised? And if so, how and why that might be the case. So we've actually went and ran this pledgeinsurance.com infrastructure into Passive Total. Now, looking at this as an analyst, we know that this is our page. We know that it's not an illegitimate one. But is there anything that sticks out that allows you to understand that it is legitimate?
Yeah, I'm seeing that we have data going back to 2009 and the same IP address across the last 6 months, right off the bat.
Yeah, so we know that this is non-malicious, but in an effort to constantly stay trained up as to what is good and what is bad, you know, it helps to every now and then run these types of queries and see, you know, just look at the patterns of data that we're observing here.
Yeah, so, only 5 IPs over the entire history.
Sure. But for this particular example, that's not really going to help us in identifying whether or not we have a compromise unless there was a huge deviation. What I'm seeing right now is a lot of the same networks that have been used for a number of years. We know that Whois isn't going to be interesting. The particular area that I want to focus in is RiskIQ's dynamic data sets that are derived from our web crawlers. So our trackers, our components, and our host pairs.
Yeah.
So let's start there. For our trackers, we got 6 of them. There's not a lot, and most of them, in fact 5 of them, are Google-based trackers. And then we have this CoinHive site key. So I'm not exactly sure what CoinHive is, but if I were the administrator of this platform, that's not something I immediately recognize. Like it sort of sticks out to me as a little strange because I don't remember putting it on there. However, I do remember running Google Analytics. I track our user engagement that way, and we run Google Tag Manager in order to easily deploy new technologies into the system. So what I'm going to do for the moment at least is just highlight CoinHive and copy that because I'm going to run a search for that a little bit later. Before I do that, let's start to go into the components. We have 68 of them here, all associated with our pledge insurance and www.pledgeinsurance.com. And if we start to look at the technology makeup, if I'm trying to figure out as an analyst whether or not I'm looking at a compromised web page, I want to start looking at things like particular technologies that are running and whether or not there might be vulnerabilities associated with them.
They could be exploited and cause somebody to get on the box that shouldn't.
Yeah, so let's just kind of go through the different categories of information that we have here. Some server modules, I would for sure take a look at PHP and OpenSSL. We know in the past those have had vulnerabilities associated with them. I'm not sure I would look at the JavaScript libraries too much, specifically the jQuery ones. Fonts, tracking pixels, more server modules as we continue to go down here. Nothing is sticking out quite yet.
Yeah, everything seems...
Joomla. So Joomla could be a potential compromise, especially with some of these versions. We could see here, in fact, that it was updated. Maybe they're running parallel versions, or it looks like they were running an old version, then they upgraded it, which is good.
Cryptocurrency miner.
Ah. So this is interesting because we referenced CoinHive before. You know, I'm an administrator. I don't quite know what that is, but even if I didn't know what CoinHive was, RiskIQ has been kind enough to tell me that it's a cryptocurrency miner. So we're running an insurance company. I don't have some sort of gaming rig set up or, you know, video card set up where we're trying to get information from our customers by mining in their browser. So I think, you know, absent looking at some of the PHP modules, which may have some vulnerabilities, I think where I'd probably spend some of my time is focusing in on that cryptocurrency miner and figuring out a little bit more, if we could, about what that is. So let's go on a quick search for that. So we're going to look for CoinHive, and we get CoinHive, the Monero Mining Club. So we can kind of look at what this is.
But there's a Krebs on security.
Yeah, and we know that Krebs is a reputable security author. So if we go and click on his website, this sort of gives us the ins and outs of what CoinHive is and exactly what it does.
Go back up to the top. It says, multiple security firms recently identified cryptocurrency mining service CoinHive as the top malicious threat to web users.
Wow. Okay, so, and specifically it goes on to say, thanks to the tendency for CoinHive's computer code to be used on hacked websites to steal processing power of visitors' devices. Right. So, our users were telling us that our website felt slow, that it was exhibiting strange behavior. Occasionally it would close out. And we're looking here that CoinHive and this cryptocurrency miner showed up back in 2017 up until January.
Yeah.
So this incident corresponded with a lot of the feedback that we were getting. And that, to me, is, you know, we're typically seeing that component on hacked-based websites. I think in terms of answering our first objective, we might be looking at our webpage that was hacked at one point in time to run cryptocurrency mining. And that, you know, if we go back to our trackers here, this site key might be something that's particularly of interest to us.
Correct.
Before we go too far on that, as a final look, I want to take a quick check over the host pairs and just identify in cases where someone's compromised the webpage and they've decided to redirect or reference another third-party website. Let's take a quick look at what we have here. We got Omega theme, which could just be associated with the web page itself.
Mercury Insurance.
Could be a parent company or somebody related. This looks like some ad-based networks. Not too worrisome at the moment.
Facebook.
More Facebook, Bing, YouTube. Facebook referencing this. LinkedIn referencing this website. Pledgeinsurance.biz could just be another one. So, in thinking about the objective that we're trying to achieve here, is the website compromised? I think we could say that yes, there's a potential compromise here. And in terms of how was it compromised? That's a little bit harder for us to figure out. The data is not always going to tell us exactly why, but if I were to spend time looking at those PHP versions, the CMS versions, chances are there might be a couple vulnerabilities that are associated with them. And then in terms of the how, it looks like the malicious actors have put cryptocurrency mining on the actual web page, and they're doing so in an effort to make money for themselves.
Correct.
So this is something that we may want to go and explore further, but I think we got our first objective answered. Yes, the website appears to be compromised. It might be associated with one of these older libraries that are used, and CoinHive was the thing that the attackers decided to put on the page. So we've identified that pledgeinsurance.com has been compromised, and the malicious actors put a cryptocurrency miner on it. And we know that because we've actually looked at the components, and that's told us. But there was another thing that really stuck out when we were doing our analysis of whether or not this website was compromised.
Yeah, the tracker.
Yeah, so the CoinHive site key. So the site key apparently is a unique identifier that is passed into the CoinHive library that allows for the mining to get associated to an individual's account.
Like a wallet. Put the coins that are generated in that wallet.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. And it looks like CoinHive is maybe even hosting the wallets for these individuals. And so, much like a Google Analytics code is very unique to you tracking individual content on your web page, it seems that this CoinHive site key is going to be associated back to an individual or group. Maybe they're sharing a login. So one of the cool things within the platform is that we can actually pivot on anything, including this CoinHive site key. So what I just did right here was I ran a pivot, and we're now seeing 9 other web properties that are displaying the same CoinHive library with the specific site key shown. Now what that tells me is that the actor or actors who are sharing this site key have potentially compromised these other web pages as well. So there's our pledgeinsurance.com, but we're also seeing MasterCard Concierge.global, airportconcierge.com, AWARE Center, broadripplelock.com. On the surface, I'm not really seeing too much of overlap between these websites. Given the seemingly unrelated nature, maybe it's possible that these actors got access to a shared web server and they were able to modify the source code directly from there.
Or potentially the same components are running that were vulnerable and were exploited.
Yeah, so if we actually click on the tab up top here for IP addresses, as our virtual users, our crawlers, went out and observed each one of these sites, they take note of the IP address in which they crawled. So in this particular case, I think my theory is shot down a little bit because what we're looking at are 8 distinct IP addresses that then correlate to the 9 or so hosts that we're looking at here. And what that tells me is there's probably not a bit of overlap. So I'm thinking it may be more on the route of what you're speaking about. Maybe there was some sort of shared vulnerable component that the attackers went after. Let's go and take a deeper look at one of these other websites and kind of do a little bit of cursory analysis here. Again, it's just a reminder, 6 months, we got data, we got, 8 years, 9 years of history.
Yeah, it looks like a legitimate website just from quick glance.
Yeah, the resolution history, there is a little bit of weirdness here. I don't know necessarily what to make of this location in particular, but Confluence Networks is something that we generally see addresses parked on. So there may not be a huge discrepancy. If we look at the trackers...
There's the site key.
There's our site key. Nothing else that really sticks out, but again, thinking about what could be vulnerable here, what might be a means in which the attackers could go about successfully compromising these hosts. Right away, something that sticks out to me is we're seeing the same PHP framework that we saw in our previous version.
Apache.
There's Apache there. I don't know if there's any vulnerabilities associated with this particular version. Joomla, we know that is often attacked by actors, and that was on the previous example that we looked at as well. So again, in trying to assess how the compromise took place, that's an area where our particular data and platform is not always going to help. But it can at least provide clues and allow you to make those correlations. So in terms of an objective here, are there other websites that were displaying the same CoinHive behavior that our insurance website was as well? And I think the answer that we've came to is yes. So we can consider this objective marked as complete. We have a small amount of websites that are exhibiting the same CoinHive behavior, suggesting that maybe they were compromised even using the same exploit that was done against our webpage. Now, our final objective here is to explore the infrastructure that was associated with this CoinHive compromise and identify whether or not all of these 9 websites are actually something that appear to be victims, or is there the potential that the malicious actor set up a testing website as well? And so we're going to use our learning from our analysis training in order to understand, if these websites appear to be legitimate or they're exhibiting behavior that we might classify as malicious. So we're going to go through each one. This is one that we explored previously in the last objective, but we can see here a pretty lengthy amount of history and other details. So far, not anything that I would be too worried about. Our who is information's privacy protected. We got a number of components, pretty substantial portion of, subdomains that are coming off of here. Some of them look a little bit suspicious just in that fact that they're, seemingly random. That might be something that we want to actually spend a little bit more time looking at. But let's see, host pairs, nothing.
It's just...
This one's a little weird.
Okay.
The torb.online, not quite sure what to make of that. It's a strange one. If we go to open source intelligence, can that tell us a little bit more? So it looks like this might just be some legitimate website.
It's got some
LinkedIn details. Looks like some potential Facebook accounts. If we go to cookies, Got a couple different things here, potentially related to the, like this betsolutions.it could be some sort of third-party provider maybe. Mm-hmm. But I am interested just in looking briefly at some of these things that appear to be random and identifying if it shares any of the same infrastructure. And at the same time, going through and screening for this particular address to see if it's bad. So we'll bounce off that really quick. So it hasn't been around too long. Singapore-based address, only one of them. Who is information? It's protected.
Protected, yeah.
You know, subdomain, not much value. Components, slightly older version of PHP. Host pairs. This might be some sort of hotel sauce. These don't seem necessarily related either. So this could be something where we might want to take a look at Google safe browsing checks and identify whether or not we're looking at something malicious here. Because maybe this is part of a larger issue. Unsafe content found. Okay. Well, this seems to this is their seemingly random subdomain, which is something that we know that malicious actors will do. Been around for quite some time. There's no active resolution information. However, the time in which it was displaying information was back in 2011, and it does seem to jive with the previous example that we were seeing. And for the sake of time, I would probably say this one we can check off of our list. Doesn't appear to be malicious. Let's go over to the next one. So we're going to load up the results here. I don't know what DSCSC stands for.
But it's been around since 2011.
2011.
2 IPs.
We got the United States where it started. Maybe it was a hosting provider. And has been around for many years on this LK location. Who is data? If we go back to some of the old stuff.
Ministry of Defense.
Okay. So that could maybe, DSCSC could be Defense Services Command and Staff College.
Yep.
So, you got some legitimate looking reason for that acronym. What we thought was random may not be random. Again, we got our CoinHive site ID, but we also have some cases where these seem to be okay. I would expect that. 18 components. So some other PHP and Joomla.
Joomla
seems to be coming
again.
up. Host pairs. Beyond Security. So they're actually referencing a security website directly from their page. I guess that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Some open source intelligence here. Nothing that really sticks out. Some SlideShare. Let's go for cookies. Oh, this is interesting.
Oh, CoinHive cookie.
Yeah, CoinHive cookie. Now, I'm curious to run a quick pivot on that and see if that leads us to anything. CF might be Cloudflare, but I don't know what CFDUID is.
Ooh.
17 million web pages have this cookie. So I can't imagine that this is going to be a good analytical lead for us. And the fact that it's occurring so frequently in our data set probably is telling me we're not looking at something malicious here.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back. I am curious to pivot on that. Other cases where we're seeing CoinHive delivering a cookie.
So
8,000. 8,000, that's a pretty low number. I probably want to spend a little bit more time in this. I mean, just looking at some of the relationships here.
Uber-MX.
Yeah, low-cost, that's accounting. Some of these could be legitimate. Some of these may be taking advantage of phishing or typo squatting. But at the very least, I'm not seeing any behavior on this particular website that gives me pause. So let's continue on. Let's go with this AWare Center. Take a look at this one. Sizable history, recent data, based out of Turkey. Let's go look at more components.
Let's look for a Joomla. Let's see.
Yeah, do we have any Joomla here?
WordPress. Joomla. Joomla. Yep.
So again, potential avenue of compromise for these websites. A lot of legitimate looking services running here. If Whois is able to give us any useful information.
Go back to the CoinHive. I think, was there more than one? Or go back to the trackers. CoinHive site ID, only one.
Okay, so only one. Same one, no overlap. So far, quick gut check tells me this one's fine. Let's keep going. Got a couple more here. Let's load those up in the background. Now, the reality is that there may not be some sort of attacker-based infrastructure associated with this particular threat. It may just been a strategic compromise of them where they're going and mining and they happen to find a vulnerability, but it's always worthwhile to check. Yeah. So let's kind of do a quick gut here. We got 6 months of data, multiple years it's been around, consistent hosting, subdomains don't appear to be anything too out of the ordinary. We got a substantial amount of components that are showing Joomla
again.
PHP. We got some host pairs that don't really seem suspicious at all. We got, looking for more trackers. No overlap on different CoinHive IDs. So let's kind of move on to the next one. Substantial history, a little bit. We got some SSL certificates here. Let's see who they're using as a provider. Okay, so they're actually using looks like this was issued via cPanel, which could be some sort of case where someone's actually purchased access to a web hosting provider, and they're hosting all their things there, and they get the certificate issued with it. No weird subdomains, trackers, same CoinHive, nothing new. Joomla. Yeah, I don't know if it's Joomla, but I mean
that's a consistent one across all.
Yeah, so far. Again, no strange things here. See our same CoinHive cookie. Let's continue on. Got 2 more left. Substantial history, consistent hosting. The who is a little interesting.
Yeah, well.
Broad Ripple Lock is the organization name, but you got this seemingly personal address that's been used. I'm not going to go too far into that simply because it may not be too much of a...
But it's back to before 2011.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm hoping for a case where we find a CoinHive site key that's something new.
Yeah.
We only got one more chance. Let's see if we got Joomla showing up
Joomla.
Here. Yep, right there. What about our host pairs? Anything interesting? Yellow book, image reference, some statistic tracking.
Yeah. Nothing.
Nothing too interesting. Cookie-wise, all the stuff you might expect are based on ads. It's our final chance to identify something that might be actor-related. And it's not looking good.
No.
Past 6 months, we have data. Goes back to 2012. The hosting initially started in, I guess, Great Britain there. Then it switches over to Ireland and then gets put in the U.S. We can see based on the heat map right now that it's actually not getting data for the past couple of weeks. So maybe it's gone offline. Maybe this U.S. hosting provider was actually like a shared host that these people did not renew their domain. Substantial amount of subdomains that suggests like this is a larger company. Docker, dev system, things along those lines.
Only one tracker.
Yep, just our CoinHive guy.
Except for Joomla. Is there any Joomla?
There may not be Joomla on this one.
No.
There's WordPress though.
Oh, this is only showing 2025.
There's 2 more chances. Let's find out. Let those reload.
Yep.
Nothing. So Microsoft, IIS, and it appeared to be running WordPress. So that doesn't mean that it couldn't be the same actor. Maybe they're just using a different exploit for the management system. Let's look at the rest of our cookies. It appears to be. Do a quick refresh on what happened there. From a cookies perspective, nothing really sticks out. I mean, this GA account travel could be something that's interesting, but it's kind of following the same theme at least.
Go back up and look at the heat map.
Oh, okay. So it looks like we may have had like an inconsistent data load there that caused a problem. But let's double check to make sure that we got everything in place. Yeah, still U.S. network, so nothing new.
Nothing new popped up.
It might have just been like a little glitch in our processing. But again, no Joomla.
No Joomla this time.
No Joomla. So, in thinking about this objective of, we had a case where our website was compromised, or it appeared that it was. It was running cryptocurrency, in CoinHive, and this particular site ID was something that we wanted to use to correlate all the other compromises and potentially identify if they were in fact compromises or if the malicious actor had made a mistake and tested with his own infrastructure. In this particular case, I'm not seeing a good example of that. All of the ones that we just looked at appear to have multi-years of history, in some cases legitimate WHOIS records with real content, subdomains that appear to match the theme, host pairs that make sense,
and these don't look like anything that we would be using as like a third party.
Not that I can tell.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of, this whole exercise, what we've came up with is the infrastructure looks fairly small, that the malicious actor who's compromising websites may be doing so strategically, but not on a wide mass scale. Given the lack of ownership or the lack of overlap between these individual websites, leads me to believe they might just be getting lucky. Or maybe it's experimental.
Yeah.
And it doesn't appear to be a shared hosting. And so in that regard, I don't think there's anything malicious here, that these websites have just been the unfortunate luck of getting compromised.
So if we summarize what we accomplished, say, we looked at pledge insurance that had some issues with performance. And by digging in, we found out that there was something unusual that was installed, CoinHive. And with that CoinHive instance, there was a site key.
Yep.
And with that site key, when we looked at it, there was 8 other domains that also had that exact same site key. So they were related to each other. And looking at the components, they had similar types of components. They had Joomla, Apache, there was PHP. And with that, there wasn't something that stood out that said, this is the particular component that might have been vulnerable that allowed them to put this on there. But it gave us the framework to look to see all those websites that we looked at were legitimate.
Appeared to be.
Yeah, appeared to be. And with that, we had to go through and look at each IP and each domain to make sure that what we were looking at wasn't the infrastructure that belonged to the threat actor.
Yeah. I think this exercise exposed some of the tedious elements of being an analyst, and that's having to go and explore each one of those leads and interrogate it, identifying all the data that's represented on the tab and trying to piece together that story. So in our case, we knew that pledge insurance was compromised, and from the site key, we correlated other websites that appeared to be compromised. We still don't quite know why that took place, but as you stated, there's a number of different web components that at this point in time, if we were the true owners of pledgeinsurance.com, I think we have enough information that we could start doing a larger investigation, identifying cases where the technology we might be using could have potential vulnerabilities that are being exploited, or that our web server might need to be locked down a bit more. But this exercise was a great example of finding that thing that's unusual, that may not have anything to do with the web server itself, but it could have been the actor changing the web application.
So when you look at your own infrastructure, sometimes a performance and availability issue might not be something that you've done yourself. It might be a security issue that you might have to investigate. And
so, especially in this day and age. So keep a lookout for those crypto miners.
Thank you.